Hello and welcome back to the Cozy Design Studio, or if you're new here, welcome. My name is Nick and I like talking about all things cozy. Today that's going to be a couple games I think you should have your eye on for the upcoming holiday season. So now, let's check out the games. If you, like myself, are a YouTube nerd and consume a lot of science communicator content, this is going to be a very intriguing pick. Starbirds is a game made by Tucana Interactive, the developers behind Dorfromantik, a game that I've covered in the past, but this time they're teaming up with their countrymen at Kurzgesagt to bring their clean and quirky visual art style and scientifically minded energy to the resource extraction / management strategy game genre. As far as the people this game will appeal to, if you're a fan of Kurzgesagt here on YouTube, I think this game will absolutely be something you're going to want to check out. It uses the incredibly unique and identifiable infographic style from their videos and translates it flawlessly into video game format, allowing you to take part in the science-based fun. Now, the press kit makes it clear this game is science-inspired, not rigidly scientifically accurate. So, while the different elements that you can mine and the general concepts are based in science and reality, they don't limit themselves to things that we know work in the real world. And that is very much in line with what they do on their YouTube channel. It's a lot of speculation of potentially possible solutions to space-related problems. A good example of this being their solar sail and cryohibernation that the crew uses to travel halfway across the galaxy in the blink of an eye. But perhaps I should expand on the actual narrative. We're introduced to a quirky crew of bird astronauts, because in the world of Kurzgesagt, the world is populated by sentient birds instead of humans. It's a long story, so just roll with it. But after the crew wakes from their hibernation, we dive right into the resource collection and facility fabrication. This all takes place on different asteroids floating out in space. The basic loop involves planting a launch pad where you can send resources back to the mothership, and complete quests which reward you with money, research points, or allow you to discover new facilities that you can use to manufacture other, more complicated materials using the raw ingredients found on each asteroid. You eventually start setting up supply lines between asteroids so you can get materials where they need to go for fabrication, and of course, as you progress, you unlock different ways to affect the efficiency of your fabrication and supply lines. But after having gotten the basics down, we find a mysterious rock which has crash landed on one of our asteroids that we're mining, and we get to work on excavating it. Once we build up our facilities to the point of being able to extract the mysterious new substance, we analyze it back on the mothership and discover that it has come from deep inside the galaxy. And so we're off to discover its origins and what other mysteries might be waiting for us out there. The story is a pretty standard space mystery exploration affair, and for what it's worth, I think that's all it needed to be. The game is really mostly concerned with the resource extraction and refinement mechanics, and the story just kind of serves to push you along in that progression. This is a game for people who like the idea of something like Anno or City Skylines or Satisfactory, but are intimidated by the difficulty and complexity in those games. Tucana have really tried to make this game appeal to veterans of the genre and newcomers alike. And being decidedly a newcomer myself, I must say they do a great job easing you in and showing you the ropes. I think the game does a good job appealing to both audiences because the stakes are very low. You're not going to lose the game at any point. There are no fail states. The worst case scenario is that you take a little bit longer to get to the next checkpoint. But if you do really want to dive in and hyper-optimize everything to make your supply lines as efficient as possible, there is plenty to allow you to do that as well. Everything down to how you run the pipes from resource extractors to where you place different facilities will affect efficiency. But, like I said, you don't have a time limit, you're not competing with anyone, and the worst that can happen is that you just take a bit longer to get to the next part of the story. So while there is plenty of depth available, it's totally optional for you to engage with at your leisure. This game is intended, much like Dorfromantik, to be a cozy, chill take on a more complex and stressful genre, and once again, they've done a wonderful job bringing the best parts of that genre to a less seasoned audience, while still allowing veterans to enjoy the experience. If you are of the optimization is cozy mindset, or you just really love the world of Kurzgesagt and want to join a motley crew of spacebound birds and their adventures, this game has got something for you, and I highly recommend you take the time to check it out. Now, it is in early access, so if that's not for you, you can always wait until the full release, whenever that comes. There's currently no word on exactly when they're looking at, but for what it's worth, from what I've played, this is one of the better early access games that I've tried. It feels very well baked and honestly mostly ready for prime time. So I think you can feel pretty comfortable getting in on this one from the ground floor. And for 20 bucks, I think the risk is pretty low. So now with that, let's check out our next game. The Last Time I Saw You is a cozy, hand-drawn, and animated narrative adventure game set in 1980s Japan, and we follow a 12-year-old boy named Ayumi on his journey through all the trials and tribulations inherent to growing up. The story is kicked off after Ayumi wakes from a dream that he's had night after night of a mysterious girl who is always just out of reach. Now, this is a very story-based game, so all the gameplay is from roughly the first hour, so none of it should spoil anything about the experience. But after we're dropped into the story, we learn a bit more about the world and the community that we're a part of. Right off the bat, you get a lot of hints at themes of the supernatural and a balance between nature and the ever-industrializing rural countryside. This game deals heavily in Japanese folklore, so if that's something that you're into, this is definitely going to be right up your alley. And I just want to say, this game really knows how to hone that cold and windy cusp of winter vibe. The artwork is absolutely astonishing. It has a wonderfully unique art style, and the animations of all the characters are incredibly well done. I'm gonna try my hardest not to compare this to a Ghibli film because I feel like any slow-paced, cozy Japanese animated media is automatically compared to Ghibli, even if that doesn't necessarily make sense stylistically. But from a thematic standpoint, the two do share a lot in common, and the vibes draw from similar eras and influences, so there is definitely a bit of a familiar vibe here. But honestly, this is just a really homey world that I just want to jump right into and inhabit. It's got those slow nights at home, the small town vibes, a whole ass NES style minigame contained within the game itself, which honestly always automatically gains points in my eyes, and the combination of all of that with a supernatural folklore that I'm not personally familiar with automatically lends it that intrigue factor and gives you a bit of a sense of discovery, which just really helps you get into Ayumi's shoes. I'm finding that I'm struggling a bit to really explain this game with words. It's not a mechanically rigorous game. There is very light combat every once in a while, but for the most part, you're just along for the ride. It's one of those games which really feels more like you're watching a great movie more than playing a game. Even though there are definitely gameplay elements like some light exploration, the aforementioned combat, and like inventory management, but even just the inventory and journal tell you so much about what this game is going for, and it's all vibes. You keep track of different characters that you meet in your journal, and they all have their own entry with beautiful illustrations and personalized descriptions, but the margins are covered in little doodles and notes that Ayumi has taken throughout his adventure. And as the days progress, your journal is updated with new information that you have picked up on your adventures and in your dreams. And it's things like that which really make the game feel alive and the world feel like somewhere you could actually step into and inhabit, even if just for a little bit. This game has atmosphere down to a science, and I think the hand-drawn world and character animations really help with that. And in a world of AI and the hyper-optimization of art, it's really nice to see something like this which has respect for the physical arts and the value of the human hand in our pursuit of that art. But anyway, let's not get too carried away. All in all, it's just a great narrative experience, and for $10, I think you'll have a hard time finding a better way to spend your downtime now that winter is quickly approaching. This would be the perfect game to play on a rainy day with a warm cup of cocoa or coffee or whatever drink you prefer. Oh, and just very briefly, the music is impeccable. It's a chill, lo-fi vibe, which just so perfectly encapsulates the feeling of playing the game. I think a lot of times lo-fi just kind of gets tacked onto a project, even if it might not necessarily fit, but I think this game is absolutely the kind of project lo-fi was made for. But anyway, we should be moving on to our next game, so if this has sounded interesting to you, I highly recommend you go check it out. If you're looking for a tight narrative with a thick atmosphere, great characters, and amazing music, I can't think of a better game to recommend than this. So now let's move on to another very much vibes game with Gris is a game from Spanish indie dev Nomad Studio and published by Devolver Digital back in 2018. So you could say I'm a bit late to the party on this one, but better late than never. Plus, I think it's fairly poetic for me to show up late to the party of a game made by Spaniards. So, let's get into it. Now, the mechanics are very simple. You walk, jump, and transform to complete different puzzles scattered throughout the land, all circling back to the main hub of the world where you're trying to collect enough stars to make your way back into the sky or something. And the name of this game really is vibes. There is no dialogue, no real narrative, just exploration of this world and tons of interesting and fairly challenging puzzles to solve along the way. And the actual name of the game, Gris, actually gives us a bit of a hint at a pretty big motif in the game: color. Now, the whole game has this watercolor and line work kind of art style to it. We start out on a simple black and white landscape, hence the name Gris, which actually means gray in both Spanish and Catalan, eventually making our way to the red desert and green forest areas, and eventually other places as well. Each one brings a different color back into the world and makes the landscape all the more rich and lively. And that is basically it as far as the gameplay goes. When you get to a new region, you'll get a bunch of puzzles that you need to solve to progress, and eventually you'll get a new ability. Like in the red desert area, you get the ability to turn into a stone block and smash through different things. And in each area, there are a couple collectibles, all of which will correlate to a different mini-puzzle within the main hub. But the main goal, if you just want to beeline the game and not bother with the extra collectibles, is gaining enough stars to complete the stairway to the sky. And that's kind of it. It's a very simple game mechanically, and it's a great one to chill out with because of the lack of dialogue. It's very reliant on the ambient sounds of the world and the music, all of which do a great job setting a vibe and transporting you into this new world. Now, I did run into a bug while playing this game, and I had actually run into the same bug the last time I attempted to play it, and it honestly just made me turn off the game and wait to come back to it later. So, as it turns out, the game has a bit of trouble handling higher frame rates. Not during regular gameplay, but specifically when you land after a long fall, the game will freeze right as you hit the ground and not progress the animation to let you land and keep moving. So no matter what buttons you click or how long you wait, you're just stuck hovering like an inch above the ground. Now, I heard online that supposedly locking the game to 60 FPS should fix this issue, but when I tried that in the NVIDIA app, it didn't seem to solve my problem, so I found that alt-tabbing out and back into the game fixes it every time and lets you continue without having to reload a save. However, while that's fine and all, I think it's pretty frustrating that after all this time, this bug still hasn't been fixed. Or at the very least, they haven't given the option to limit the frame rate in the game menu. Ultimately, it's not that big of a deal, but it really does pull you out of the game, which is a shame for a game which focuses so heavily on creating an evocative and alluring atmosphere. But to its credit, I didn't find it particularly difficult to get back into that atmosphere after this bug, and it didn't show up very often. So that one bug aside, I had a great time with this game. The art is absolutely beautiful. It looks like a unique take on a Salvatore Dali painting, combined with the environmental art from something like, as weird as it sounds, Samurai Jack. It's got this kind of void landscape with insane amounts of negative space and alien-looking creatures that you see in a lot of Dali's work, mixed with the kind of techno-future Art Deco style you get in a lot of the environmental art in Samurai Jack. Things like the trees in the forest area are just so incredibly evocative, and it's all just mixed with this beautiful watercolor palette and style. The design and execution in general is absolutely stunning. If you are of a more artsy kind of mind and you're looking for a game that makes you feel like you're walking around inside of a surrealist watercolor painting of an alien world, this is absolutely going to be the game for you. It's an indie classic for a reason, and who am I to turn my nose up at the consensus of my peers? But now we'll switch gears to something completely different from Gris and onto something more in line with what you might expect from a game rather than an art exhibit, with our last title. If you, like myself, grew up watching those Warner Brothers kid-friendly adventure movies like Pippi Longstockings and The Swiss Family Robinsons or anything like that, this game is going to really appeal to you. Eriksholm, or Eriksholm, I'm pretty sure it's Eriksholm, is a linear stealth game about a young girl and her brother in early Industrial Revolution era England who are trying to make ends meet by any means necessary. After catching the illness ravaging the area and narrowly recovering, your brother goes off to work while you take some time to rest. Now, after your brother doesn't come home that night, you get an angry knock at your door and a policeman busts in. You narrowly escape being brought into the station for questioning and set out to find your brother and figure out what he did to get the police on his case. Through the course of the first couple chapters, we learn that our protagonist used to be part of a local criminal organization, or quite possibly local resistance. Regardless, we decided to leave that life and live quietly with our brother above board. But now, all of that is in jeopardy, so it's of the utmost importance that you find your brother so you can fix this. After returning to the leader of that criminal organization and asking for help, you're given a blow dart and set off on your adventure to find your brother. This is a game in a genre I don't have much experience with: top-down stealth. And that's not because I don't like stealth games. In fact, I love them, but I've not played too many from the top-down perspective, and I have to say, I have some mixed feelings about it. My negative feelings mostly have to do with the camera. It's a bit awkward to control, and it makes sneaking around a bit more finicky than I think it kind of should be. However, after I'd say about 30 minutes of playing, I do think I got a pretty good grasp of it. And I have to say, it's really nice in a stealth game to be able to see where everyone is in a given location. But still, even knowing where they are doesn't make it any easier to avoid being seen, so don't mistake the fact that it's top-down for it being easy. It's not what I would describe as insanely hard, but I did find it to be manageable and satisfactory in terms of difficulty. But the basic gameplay consists of making your way from one point to the next without being seen and using the environment to your advantage. You're heavily incentivized to avoid combat, and as I mentioned before, your main weapon is your blow dart with sleep darts. And if you do use it, you can't simply leave a body where it falls, because if someone discovers it, you'll restart from the last checkpoint. And speaking of checkpoints, they do a good job sectioning up the different levels, and even if you do fail, you're never sent back so far that it's a slog to get back to where you were. And as with every good difficulty system, if you got caught, it's for a good reason, and it's on you. I really didn't have much of an issue with BS fail states, and that is always a huge plus in a stealth game. Enemies are just the right amount of unpredictable while still being understandable. So, while you can definitely get caught off guard if you don't strategize well, if you do, then you're going to be good. I guess what I'm saying is that the difficulty feels fair. But let's get back to what I started with, the setting. As I said, this game is set in the early Industrial Revolution, and so that sees you running around on tin roofs and through shanty towns past all kinds of steam-powered machinery and company signs. They all do a really great job capturing that feeling of those movies that I mentioned at the start, where it feels like you're just a little kid having an adventure, always on the run from some overly self-important adult. And always narrowly escaping being caught. And it's things like using a blow dart as your only weapon that I think really leans into this theme. It's like exactly the kind of thing a Leave It to Beaver kid would imagine using to fight against adults in this kind of setting. I don't know, I just really think they got this aesthetic and world building down right, and it fulfilled a fantasy I didn't even remember having, but now, having played this game, I totally can't get enough of. The only thing I will say is that while the graphics look stunning, and especially in the cutscenes, when actually playing, I found the image to look just a bit muddy, and I had the resolution scaled to 100% and at the right resolution, so I'm not quite sure why this was the case. Though it definitely didn't take away from the experience of playing, and it really did fade into the background after a bit. Now, it is $40, so it's the most expensive game on this list, but I honestly think it's worth that price. It feels like a really solid narrative with great gameplay and a wonderful world to jump into. I think you could get a lot less for $40, but I also know that that's a bit much for a game from an indie studio with no other games to their name. However, given this is their first game, it's an incredible first showing, and I can definitely see this being a lot of people's favorite game. It's a really great first showing, and hey, it has a demo, so if you aren't sure if you want to buy it, you can always check out the demo and see if it's up your alley. But I think that's just about all the time we have for today. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you found a game or two, I would love to hear about it down in the comments. I always love hearing what you have to say about the games that I play. But other than that, I'll just say thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, happy gaming.